Ladies and gents, it's that time of the year again, where we jam to lobby music, lose our minds, and look up Kyostin guides. And this cycle repeats for 2 straight weeks. Say hello to Dawnseeker. Contingency contract Dawnseeker is coming out at the end of August, right after Golden Glows event, and this video will help you prepare for what's coming. I will go over the new daily stage, the permanent stage including the mechanics, enemies, and risks, as well as operators that can help you clear Risk 18. For those of you who got Ling from Invitation to Wine, I know you are dying to know if Ling would be a great operator to use in the CC, which I will answer towards the end of the video. Just like the previous CC, 2 daily stages will be replaced by the previous permanent stage and a completely new one. Out goes Windswept Highlands and Lockdown Prison, and in comes Chief Foothills and Sargon Sandsea Ruins. Wow, say that 10 times fast. Sargon Sandsea Ruins features some enemies that we encountered exclusively in Originum Dust back in 2021. One of them was these anti-armor infantries. They shoot a rocket on their first attack and run away as if their parents saw their browser history. Therefore, you need to bait their rocket attack first with a fast redeploy operator, or basically anyone. Make sure to bring some anti-air snipers as well because you will encounter plenty of air support drones, offensive and defensive. The offensive drone, known as Scrapped, shoots 2 grenades at your operators and lowers their defense. On the other hand, the defensive drone, known as Anvil, buffs the enemy's defense and heals surrounding enemies. Both of these drones will retreat after some time, but there are risks that makes these drones last longer on the battlefield. Some enemies can interact with the air support drones. One of them is the tactical crossbowman, who calls for offensive drone before attacking. And another one, and perhaps the most paranoid enemy in the history of Arknights, and behaves like a spoiled rich kid. The War Phantom calls for the offensive drone on their first attack, and the defensive one when their HP falls below 50%. On top of that, as long as they are in the battlefield, all movement speed of all supply drones are increased. Overall, this stage doesn't look that difficult and should be easy to clear Risk 8 with low rarity operators. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the permanent stage for CC8. On the surface, it may seem intimidating. However, once you get a grasp of how the mechanic of the stage works, you are good to go. The stage uses the same mechanic as in our light, where your operators need light in order to deploy in the battlefield. There are neon towers and night emblems as your initial light source, where your operators will be deployed upon. In CC8, you get 3 neon towers and night emblems each. Once deployed, each operator emits light covering a 3x3 area in front of them, and the area behind them remains dark. Because of this mechanic, the direction your operators are facing is crucial in achieving Risk 18. You don't want them to face the wrong direction and hinder your progress. Enemies in the dark automatically gains invisibility and in some cases, special abilities. A CC event is not complete without a boss or 2. Say hello to Candle Knight and a teenager who's desperate for attention, Tola. I wish you choke on your own blood, you piece of shit. Candle Knight has the ability to cast an arch nuke over a large area. This skill is known as Shimmering Touch. She takes 7 seconds to charge it up, and during this time, Candle Knight stops moving, losing her invisibility, which presents a great opportunity for you to strike. On the other hand, Tola is annoying as ever. If there is no light behind an operator, Tola will deal a massive amount of physical damage to that operator anywhere on the map. Aside from the bosses, there are 2 other mobs that you need to be aware of. The first one is the Drifter Knights. These guys spawn in the dark areas of the map, sleeping. After a while, they will start moving towards the blue box or when a light touches them. They are quite annoying to deal with due to their very tanky build and also hard-hitting attacks. The last enemy, and is the most annoying out of them all, are these armorless Union Corrosion Archers. They are basically squishier versions of Foss, but their arrows deals corrosion, which reduces your operator's defense. If the affected operator is not healed in time, the corrosion could easily compromise your defenses. I want to start this segment by sharing the 2 risks you should avoid to the best of your abilities, unless you are trying to clear Risk 33 or you are trying to clear a challenge. They are the attack speed down 2 and attack down 3. These 2 risks make all operators' attack to be slow, weak, and borderline useless. With that out of the way, let's dive into the various risks available for this event. I will only cover risks unique to CC8 because the rest of them are more or less the same as previous CC events. To start off, both Candle Knight and Tola have their own unique set of risks. Candle Knight's level 1 risk increase her max HP by 50% and halves the charge up time of Shimmering Touch. At higher levels, there are two different risks that change her attack slightly. Candle Knight Fade gives her additional HP boost, quite a lot, becomes a lower priority target, and Shimmering Touch has a shorter charge time and cooldown. At level 3, Shimmering Touch no longer has a charge time and becomes an instant nuke attack. Meanwhile, Candle Knight Beast turns Candle Knight into quite literally a beast. In addition to additional max HP, she gets an attack buff, increased attack range, and ignores 80% resistance on your operators. So if you don't want to make your life a living hell, consider taking Candle Knight Fade, that way you don't have to worry about your squad getting wiped out. Tola also has its own set of risks. At level 1, all of his stats are buffed. Pretty straightforward. On higher levels, Tola also has two different mechanics. The first one, Tola Goons, buffs all of his stats except resistance, and 9 Zamora imitators will appear on the stage as well. I don't recommend taking this risk unless it's for challenges, because dealing with one 9 Zamora Goon is already annoying enough, and it will make your run harder if you take this risk in your R18 run. Instead, you should pick the other one, which is called Tola Early. For this risk, all of Tola's stats, except for defense, receive buffs, and he appears earlier. By earlier, I mean from the start of the run. He also gains stealth at level 3, so pick the one on level 2 for risk 18. Moving on, here are other risks that are more specific to CC8 and you should also be aware of. Drifter Knights gets their own risks that increase their body count in the battlefield. You get one on the first week and another one on the second week. There are also environment restrictions that limits the number of neon lights and night emblems. You should consider taking one of these risks because generally light is not that big of a problem as long as you know where to put your operators. Armorless Union, Crossbowmen, and Assassins each receive a risk that buffs their own stats in the dark. The operators you pick will mostly depend on which class restrictions you pick. I would personally recommend banning guards and specialists, as that will allow you to bring shelter and deal some serious damage. Her skill 3 is what people call as balance. Covers a lot of ground and slows down enemies in range, giving you ample time to kill the two bosses and weaker mobs without leaking them. This strategy is probably the most common approach due to its empty brain nature, and it works very well with 3 and 4 star operators. The other class restriction bans caster and snipers, so most of your damage will come from guards, supporters, or in some cases, defenders. You'll definitely need a few more 6 stars in the team to make this strategy work, so here are some guard recommendations. The first one is Nur Alter. She's a great heli drop to use against Candle Knight, and thanks to her talent that allows her to stun and deal true damage to surrounding enemies. Her skill 2 also gives Nur up to 4 shields, extending her survivability in the middle of this mess. Silver Ash also works pretty well in this stage. His talent reveals invisible enemies despite being in the dark areas of the map. And we can't forget about Surtur. She works great as a heli drop, her immortality also works great to tank damages, and she is a great alternative if you don't have Nur Alter. For general use operators, you might want to consider Wandering Medics to mitigate the corrosion damage. Pair them with any defenders, and as long as you don't take the attack speed down or attack down, your defenders should be fine and corrosion should be no problem. There is another way to fight these corrosion archers from range by just using defenders that return some damage back to the enemy. Defenders such as Hoshiguma using her skill 2, Nien, skill 2, and Bubble, skill 2. Another MVP of CC8 is Nightingale. In addition to her talent that gives additional 15 resistance to all allies at pot 1, Nightingale's skill 3 is the best counter against Candle Knight's Arch Nuke. The sheer amount of arch resistance from this skill makes Shimmering Touch feels like someone throws a crumpled paper at you. In addition to all that, Nightingale can summon her birdcage to alleviate some pressures on your operator. And my final recommendation would be Suzuran for the damage amplification and additional healing from her skill 3. If you manage to get Ling from Invitation to Wine, you're probably excited to finally test her limits in CC8. Besides, all those months of saving up and skipping banners better be worth it. I've been using Ling for a little more than 2 weeks now, and after analyzing some videos of CC8 clears with Ling on YouTube, I can confidently say that Ling is a really good operator to use in CC8. But of course, she can't do it solo. You need to use her skill 3 to do any sort of damage, and that also gives you access to the higher form dragons. Each dragon can take the role of a guard and a defender, and they are strong enough to take on Tola and Candle Knight, but without a secondary DPS or external buffs, it takes a few dragons to take down both bosses. Since Ling is basically a one-woman army, she is the perfect workaround if you take the max squad size 2 risk, which lowers the number of operators you can bring. However, Ling also has a massive drawback, which is her high DP cost. Each dragon costs 23 DP each, and you need a bare minimum of 4 to form 2 high form dragons, which adds up to 104 DP total, including the cost to deploy Ling herself. Therefore, investing in her module will reduce the cost of her dragons by 5 DP each, reducing it to 18, which brings down the total deployment cost to just 84 DP. Keep in mind that you still need vanguards if you decide to pick either of the DP down risk. Finally, there is one risk that you absolutely must avoid when using Ling, and fortunately it's only available on week 2. This risk is called Summon Trap Cost Up. If you take that, the cost of her dragons would be triple, and Ling would be more expensive to deploy than the average gas prices in 2022. In summary, CC8 has the 4th best soundtrack, a daily stage that always have air support, and a permanent stage where lighting is a problem. It may seem intimidating at first, but once you get used to the lighting mechanic, everything will be smooth sailing and you should have no problem getting that prestigious risk 18. So from today until the day that CC8 comes, prepare your necessary operators and your mental strength as well, because you will need your IRL sanity for this event. Or if you're too lazy, you can just look up guides. That is all for this video. If you have anything to share, put it in the comments below and I will read them. See you next time.